So yeah, Abir, thanks for agreeing to give me this testimonial. Yeah, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself, and then we can pop right into the questions.
Sure thing. So my name's
Yeah.
Abir Syed. I'm a CPA that focuses on the e-commerce space. So I run an e-commerce accounting firm as well as an agency, which allows me to get a little bit extra insight in how to do good accounting work for e-commerce brands because I'm very familiar with the performance marketing side of things as well. So essentially two businesses that require client acquisition.
Okay. Cool. And so obviously, because we're talking, you do some aspect of cold email, like you have it as a service. So like what if I could ask you what what factors like made you decide that you wanted to hire somebody specifically for your cold email outreach efforts? Like, was there anything in particular?
Yeah, of course. So ultimately, the goal was to move from a situation where we were primarily growing through referrals, which is obviously nice insofar as it's a testament to the quality of our work, but at the same time, it's not especially reliable as a growth tool. So there are multiple channels that we're able to kind of activate for the purposes of client acquisition. One of them being ads, and one of them being cold email, which are just I think good ones to spin up that give you immediate results as opposed to anything like content marketing, which is a bit more of a long-term play. And in the case of the ad side, we're able to get some good results, but naturally the costs there can get quite high quite quickly, especially if you're going a little more bottom of funnel, like on Google Ads. But with cold email, there's an opportunity to be able to kind of reach out to people that aren't necessarily actively shopping around. They're a little bit potentially less price sensitive, even if the close rate might be a little bit harder because of the fact that they're not actively searching for someone. But it gave us an opportunity to basically tap into an audience of people that aren't being attacked necessarily by every other agency, and it gives us a little bit more of an opportunity for differentiation as opposed to something like Google Ads, where depending on keywords, there's a whole bunch of other agencies also bidding on those keywords, and some of those agencies just have much bigger budgets. So I had started off by attempting a little bit of cold email myself. I kind of learned the entire process, how the systems work. So set it up, and I was able to launch some campaigns. But ultimately, there's obviously a limit to how much or how high the quality of my own campaigns can be, given that it's not something that I specialize in. And at the same time, there is a fair bit of work that goes into being able to manage the process effectively and make sure that you're getting the best results for it. And just given the bandwidth that I have, it was an interesting avenue to test out and make sure that I understood it well. But if I wanted to do it at scale, it's not something that was reasonably doable by myself. So working with someone else was definitely the obvious choice in that scenario. And the fact that I had done enough of it myself to be able to vet the individual that I was working with and make sure that they knew what they knew, and at least I can be confident they're doing a good job, was also an added bonus.
Hmm. Okay, cool. Yeah, and obviously, I mean, you came through a referral as well. It was like a
Yes.
two-way referral.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, and like you, because you said you like learned, you made sure you understood it before you like brought somebody on yourself. Like, so now that you brought somebody, that since you brought somebody on, like, are there any improvements you've seen like in your cold email outreach since we started working together? Like, be
Oh
it
yeah, absolutely.
appointment, clients, or
Yeah, of course. The results are far greater than anything I was able to achieve at the time that I was trying it myself, and at the same time, that's partially because of the significant improvement in the quality of execution, but also the fact that the volume is much higher than what I would have been able to manage. So even if what I did was decent, it's just better and a lot more of it. And I would not have been able to achieve those similar results without dedicating a significant amount of time and also spending a lot more, efforts into improving my experience and skill, which again, just from a bandwidth perspective, wasn't necessarily a reasonable way to go about it.
yeah. Okay, and I mean, with do you do you, I mean, we've been working together now for like just over a year, so because it's a bit, I mean, we know each other personally to some degree, but it's also like a bit, it's predominantly a business relationship. So I can assume then there's an ROI for you, for your business. It's like, do you have an estimate in terms of like the, if you're willing to share it, do you have an estimate in terms of like your LTV or your revenue that you've experienced since we've started working together?
Sure. So
If-
giving very strong estimates of ROI are going to be tough because the true ROI is going to be a function of how long clients stay. And like you mentioned, we've been working together a year, so we know that we are able to keep several clients for at least 9 months, for example. But there's a good chance they'll stay a lot longer, in which case the ROI will prove to be higher than what we've seen thus far. But what we've seen thus far is we've been able to acquire like a good $100,000 of revenue, and the ROI has been quite clearly high enough that the rate at which we're acquiring clients and the fact that we're able to retain them long enough has shown that over time, the amount of revenue that we've collected from clients acquired through this channel has quite rapidly outpaced the amount of costs that we've incurred to manage this channel with you. So the value was clear that as long as clients stay, as long as they have been thus far, it's worth it. And the longer they stay, it's just going to make it more and more worth it over time because we've already acquired them once, and that's just more and more LTV kind of getting added on. So the first few months, obviously, there's a little bit of a kind of startup kind of phase, if you will, and you're incurring costs for the first few months before you're able to close anybody. And then clients that you've only had for a month, you only have 1 month of revenue from them. Then you get 2 months of revenue, 3 months of revenue. So that's where the curve starts to kind of the two lines on the chart, the revenue and the costs start to kind of intersect, and then the revenue starts outpacing the costs much faster. So it takes a little bit of time to get there, a few months, but it was quite clear from all the leading indicators that we were trending in that direction. And now that we've kind of past that part of the curve and we know that we've acquired much more revenue than we've invested from a cost perspective, we know the ROI is very positive. We just don't know how positive it'll end up being.
Mhm. Okay, like long term.
Exactly.
Uh,
It'll be better than what it
yeah,
is. We just don't know how much better.
yeah. Okay, and I mean, because I know you also like run other acquisition strategies. How how would you compare like your other strategies that you've invested in terms of ROI versus the cold email services?
I'd say that from an ROI perspective, strictly financially speaking, the cold email is probably one of the better ones, if not the best. The only thing that's financially perhaps better than cold email is content marketing. But that one's a tricky one because that has capacity issues and time investment. So, for example, with cold email, it's a lot easier because if I don't have time 1 week to be able to do cold email, it doesn't really matter. I can just kind of have you handle that. And so appointments keep on coming. So the machine keeps on churning. With respect to content, we've gotten a lot of great leads, some of our best leads from there, but there's a limitation to how much content I can produce and how much time I can spend it because a lot of it is reliant much more on me, given the fact that it's a bit more expert knowledge. So while I can get some support in that regard, it's harder to be able to churn it out at quite the same rate. Though, to be fair, content obviously in the very long term, because it's a bit of a snowball effect, is probably going to be the highest performing channel, but it's not great as a startup approach. It takes time to get rolling and it'll be good down the road, but it's really not an either or question. The nice thing about something like cold emails, I can get your results much faster and at a much more reasonable ROI.
Mhm. Okay. And I mean, so is there anything in particular that in terms of our working relationship that you enjoy? Because my next question is like, would you recommend? I know you've already recommended me to one person, but my next question would be if you'd recommend like myself and the work I do to anybody else. But are there any like things that you enjoy about our working relationship in terms of cold email or just a personal
Yeah, of
wise?
course. So, I mean,
Yeah.
other than the fact that you're just a fun guy to talk to and you're a nice guy, I'd say it's the professionalism with which you kind of approach the work. So the level of quality that you bring and the attention to detail in terms of making sure that the quality is executed at a high quality, like at a high level and a high caliber, is very relevant to me, especially because of the fact that I have a certain amount of, I hope not excessive, but like a certain amount of desire to protect the reputation of the brand with the efforts that we're doing. So I don't want to necessarily spray and pray in this kind of sloppy, poorly branded way. So knowing that you're kind of managing that process, especially even on the appointment setting front when people respond, I'm not concerned about the responses that you're sending people or what you're saying, because I know that you have a very professional approach and a very professional way of communicating as well. So I don't have the concerns that the brand of our company is in bad hands, so to speak. So that's one very strong factor that kind of allows me to just rely on you and trust you wholeheartedly. And the other one is that I know that you have a lot of integrity with respect to the way that you approach the work, such that you are honest not only in terms of like the dealings around items like costs for certain accounts and whatnot, and what sort of expenditures need to be incurred to be able to kind of keep the machine running, but at the same time, insofar as being able to make a genuine effort such that our long-term ability to send cold email and function effectively is protected. So whether that be with respect to deliverability or deploying the best tools for our domains or all that fun stuff, like I know that you care about doing a good job there. So I'm happy that I can just kind of rely on your advice on that front. So even though I do happen to perhaps know more about cold email than maybe the average client would, I can recommend you to people who don't know anything, because I know you'd be in good hands.
Okay, thanks. So I guess, I mean, leading into the final question, whether you kind of answered it, whether you'd recommend my services to other people. Um, I guess I would sum that up as a yes. Then you feel free to say no.
Yeah, of course. No, of course. I like you've noted, I have recommended you before, and I would continue to recommend you. The only reason I'd stop is if for some reason that meant you couldn't work with me anymore. So as long as you don't ditch me for greener pastures, I'll keep recommending you because you do fantastic work, and I'm happy to support you.
All right, thanks, Abrid. So yeah, thanks so much for your time for this, and appreciate your candid feedback.